In the time before time, there was Bionicle. But in the time before that time, there was Robo Riders. And in the time before that time, there was Slizers. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is Slizers and Throwbots, otherwise known as the same thing, but then we're also going to be talking about Robo Riders as well. We're going to talk about some of the themes that existed before Bionicle, because they're pretty cool to be honest, and there's a lot we can learn from them. So let's roll up our sleeves and dive right on in, shall we? The first mock we've got today is by IGU and is called Mock Slizer Spark / Throwbot Spark. Now before we begin actually, let's quickly talk about what the heck a Slizer / a Throwbot is. So, Slizers, which were known as Throwbots in the US and Canada, for whatever reason they decided to change the name depending on where you lived, is a sub-theme of Technic that launched in the winter of 1999 and continued into the 2000s. Or just 2000, didn't last that long. It features bots that throw, hence the name. They're a cool thing. You'll be seeing some sets on the screen right now. It was a cool one. And of course we'll talk a little bit more about them and what they look like and how you could approach one in this episode. But now let's talk about Robo Riders. So Robo Riders was a short-lived series launched in 2000 by LEGO, and that followed the theme Slizers, or Throwbots. A total of 7 official sets and 4 promotional sets were released while this series lasted. It also featured some cool special cans. When you expose them to cold temperatures, they'd reveal some cool codes and you could play some online games. That's pretty cool. You could even use those canisters as actual pieces in combo models too, which was also pretty cool. But yeah, 2 themes that appeared before Bionicle. Pretty rad. Anyway, back to IGU's awesome mock. So, this is of course a revamp of a Slizer set known as Spark. So it's funny, the original set is actually vastly different from this revamp here. And I really like that. Because I know when I was a kid, you'd get a toy or you'd imagine like a Pokemon battle in your head or something. And in your mind, this thing was the coolest thing. It looked nothing like what it actually looked like. It was just 2 little sprites fighting on a Game Boy. Or, it's just this funky, weird, munted-looking dragon thing fighting this other guy or whatever. Just as what your toys looked like. They didn't look that impressive, but in your head, they looked insanely cool. And so I kind of like the idea of going, alright, how did this look to younger versions of you? What does your imagination see this as? It might be vastly different from what it actually looks like, but if you can imagine it in an even cooler light, that's pretty cool. Or if you could give it a slight different flair. Because, for example, I look at this and I'm like, man, you made this Slizer look like Godzilla. And I like that. The idea of just combining something cool with an already existing set and then making it into this awesome abomination, horrid monster of awesomeness that is this mock. See, I love this kind of Godzilla look that it's got, the fact that it's got this like mohawk of spikes and then spikes down its back and tail there. Looks great. And the color scheme too of purple, black, and then combining it with these electric pieces that are kind of a fair few different colors, kind of a trans blue, trans green, and kind of almost like a trans yellowy green as well. Those colors look really nice together. I think that's pretty cool. I also like the arms that this guy has, these very long mechanical arms with fingers on the end there. I don't know, it kind of looks like this is some sort of mechanical experiment, like a Mechagodzilla thing gone wrong, and he's got these electrical powers now and these crazy weird arms. He's come to life and he's terrorizing the city. I kind of like that. There's a lot of different mechanical textures and details on this, including some little highlights of yellow. It really does give it that mechanical look. You take a look at mechs from different forms of media and stuff like that. They'll often have sort of decals and stickers on them, or kind of caution symbols, and some of those would be yellow and stuff like that, or red or whatever. And I kind of like that. It's just a fitting little nice detail here on this mock. It's a pretty cool IGU. A very different revamp to the original set, but one that looks very nice, that's for sure. Next mock here is by Close the Wolf and is called Oh Dusty. So this is a revamp of the Robo Rider known as Dust. This was a fun little cool set here. Dust also came with some of these really cool chrome dart pieces. Chrome pieces are always lovely, and it's nice to see that this revamp of Dust also has these chrome pieces. It's also nice to see that this revamp actually transforms as well. I really, really dig that. Because that was always something about, I remember it with some of the LEGO Racers games. It was the thing of you could explore the world and do cool stuff, but you could never leave your car. And obviously the game is about racing, so that's sort of fair, but I remember little pipe dreams playing that game and being like, what if I could get out of my car and walk around and go inside this building or do this? Wow, So I like the idea of getting the racer-style Robo Rider set and making it so he can walk at his own 2 legs there, just giving him a bit more character, a bit more maneuverability, and just, expanding on him in some fun way. I think this mock does that very nicely. So I think the transformation on this is really cool. It's more or less, it's a very simple transformation in terms of he more or less just sort of moves his limbs slightly, rearranges a few things, and then just kind of lies down. And that's not me mocking this transformation here. It's beautiful, it's great. And I like that it is simple because, you know, when you look at some Transformer sets, they can be these crazy, highly engineered, insane things that take like 80 steps to transform. And whoever designed that is a mastermind, engineer, crazy, talented person, because I couldn't do that. And then you get some other transformations which take like 2 or 3 steps, and it more or less just is like fold these in, put this down, and have him lie down. And they're simple, they're easy, it's something you could easily recreate yourself. So do that. Take a look at some of your Bionicle mocks and go, you know, maybe the ones you're building or even the ones you've already currently built. Maybe they have a secret transformation you don't even know about. Just see if, you know, maybe rearranging a few things or possibly introducing some slight aspects to the mock as you're working on it. Can it actually transform? And I think another fun detail that this mock has once it's in its robot mode is the fact that the wheels are its feet. And I've always liked this concept of kind of having these, wheel feet things. So that he kind of just moves around by rolling the wheels, that sort of thing. And, you know, maybe introducing an aspect of that on the mock that you're making, you know, blatantly putting wheels or tires on it somewhere, or introducing a certain aspect to it that could be like a weapon, like a big old tank cannon or something, kind of like Megatron, and that then, when it transforms, becoming a major part of the vehicle mode. So little slight things like that could really aid a transformation on a mock. You never know until you try it. I also love the claws on this, using those chrome dart pieces I was talking about before as fingers here. The fact they're chrome, they really seriously stand out and look absolutely beautiful. And also the idea of using those dart pieces, because they come in a few other colors and also in some more recent sets as well. But using them as fingers, it's a clever, nice looking little design there. I really dig it. Also, I've always sort of stayed away from a lot of those Robo Rider heads, not out of spite or anything, of course not, but just, I don't know, just didn't think they looked that great. But this mock here has me thinking again, I'll be honest, because the dust head on here is just this funky, weird kind of printed piece over this Slizer, or Throwbot head here, and Slizer head for that matter, and it looks really, really nice. Really adds a lot of personality to the mock and really fits the overall kind of frame and structure that this guy has. It's cool. It's really nice work, Mr. Claus the Wolf. Done a great job revamping this guy. On to the next one. This is by Marin Stipkovic, and it's called Mech Monday number 10, Slizer Revamp. So this, of course, is a revamp of a set known as Scuba or Slizer. And this guy was cool. He had a bit more of an aquatic theme. He had a little harpoon, and he had this little sort of breath mask thing. He was nice. Also some really striking, beautiful blue colors there. Very cool. Now this one's a little bit more system heavy, but there's some really cool concepts I wanted to cover in this one that you could easily translate to Bionicle stuff. So this guy is naturally much larger than the original set was. Not a huge amount, but he's probably sort of doubled in size here. He's been hitting the gym and he's a lot bigger. And so I love how much he's expanded upon the kind of face details here. Really, this is kind of doubled in size, like I was saying, and the details here are very system focused, but it very much mirrors the original design as well, and it's pretty cool. And I like that idea of grabbing a bunch of system pieces and going, okay, I want to build this like Rakshi head or something, but I want it to be much larger or maybe even much smaller. How can I do so? Well, system pieces naturally are beautiful because they're a lot smaller than Bionicle pieces and you can pack in a lot more detail. So if you want to maybe downscale or upscale a piece, this is certainly one way you could do it. Get a bunch of those system pieces together, play around with them, see what you can do, and then you might be able to build a slightly larger or slightly smaller or even much larger version of a mask, head, or any other body part. So I think that's cool. And the same kind of goes here for this sort of breath apparatus thing around his mouth here, using some tube pieces there and a few other things. It looks fantastic. Very much kind of mirrors the original design, but takes it in a new direction and even steers it a little bit more, maybe even a little bit more accurately than the original set does. It's nice to see. But yeah, overall, really, really cool looking guy here. Love all these different kind of like spikier textures here, like on the arm and on the back here. Looks a little bit more aquatic, kind of like a scaly fish or something like that. Really nice texture play there. I like what he's done. Pretty cool. On to the next guy. This is a mock by Lego David and is called Earth Robo Rider. So kind of the main structure of this mock seems to be based around a Lego Mutta torso. And of course, these came on the original Toa Mutta sets as well as the Toa Nuva. And I always like these pieces. I don't really see people using them all that much, but they're really versatile, helpful pieces. And honestly, I think this piece is so useful because I imagine he very much started with this Mutta torso and then kind of just used a lot of the connection points on it and built around it. And so I kind of recommend that, getting one piece and one that you think would be a little bit more easier to use, or maybe you've got a few of them or you just want to use it for something, and then just kind of look at the connection points and just start building off of that and just seeing where it takes you. And maybe a Mother Torso is the piece you can consider using here, because honestly, it has a lot of connection points. It's a very sturdy, strong piece, and it kind of takes up a lot of space as well. So it's really nice to use for a sort of internal structure like this, kind of forming the main structure of this mock. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I think he's really effectively nailed the look of a Robo Rider here, giving it really cool head like that, giving it some cool weapons and some striking colors there. The gold on the black looks beautiful and very much kind of works with the sort of printed face design that this guy's got as well. It's very cool. Also too, if you're like me and a whole bunch of other people, you've got a whole bunch of tires lying around. And if you don't really build cars or anything that uses tires, you probably just have a box of them sitting there doing nothing. Maybe you could build a Robo Rider, put some tires on it, and make something cool like this. And maybe you could build a couple of them, and then you can make a little ramp out of some boxes or some wood or something, and have them race, see who wins, that sort of thing. Could be quite fun, actually. Be a nice, fun day spent with your Lego. Could be cool. Could be a fun way to play. But yeah, some clever stuff going on this Robo Rider revamp. Nicely done. This next mock is by My Snail Eats Pizza, and it's called Dust Slizer. Now, of course, we saw a Dust Slizer revamp before, but here's another one, and guess what? This one also transforms. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Pretty cool. I love the kind of general stance and structure of this guy's torso here. Using some of these Technic panel pieces in tan, they form this really beautiful broad-shouldered look here, and it's very visually striking. It just looks nice. And the fact that the torso up here is naturally much larger, and then we kind of go down to the legs and it sort of starts to become a bit smaller. It's a very unique look, and it does have this air of personality to it, and this air of almost kind of strength and versatility. Kind of looks like you might have robot legs or something, and they can kind of, you can run around really fast, and they're, very sleekly designed or something like that. Pretty cool to see, actually. It's a very unique structure. Not necessarily, typical human proportions. It's taking it outside of that realm, but it works well, and it looks really nice. I also love what he's done here on the arms, using some of these printed system pieces here. They look gorgeous. The print on them is great, and actually putting them on the Bionicle here is a great idea. And I definitely recommend that. Take a look at your system collections, or go out and grab a couple system sets and use some stickers or some printed pieces and see if they'd work well on a mock, because you can get these really interesting, beautiful designs or patterns or looks onto that mock. And it's going to really effectively fit and work on a mock, depending on the part that you use. And it can add this nice sense of flair or even kind of beauty to the mock to some degree. And I think this is a great example of just how awesome that can look and how effective it can be. So maybe it's something to consider. But yeah, a really strong silhouette to this mock, and overall just looks super cool. And again, love the transformation. Always cool when you can have a mock transform. And I've said this almost every time that I've had a Bioformer or a Transformer on an episode, but I think it's really cool advice. It was a mock that I put in on an earlier Bioformers Transformers episode where the guy who made it said that he built this mock, then just started playing around with it and suddenly realized, hey, this actually transforms. If I move the legs down, fold up the arms, add a couple other things to it, it actually is a transformer. I didn't even realize. So it's always something to consider. Get a look at any of your Bionicle mocks, any of them, and just play around with the limbs, fold them up a little bit, maybe add a couple connection points here and there. You might have a Transformer mock already in your midst and you don't even know it until you try it. And I think that's pretty cool. The next mock here is by Disty and is simply called Drone Slizer Electro. I love the idea of making a drone out of Bionicle pieces. Don't really see that every day. It's pretty unique, but pretty cool, honestly. And I think this is a great example of really effectively doing one. Of course, using some of these propeller pieces here is definitely an important thing to do, and you can easily find some of those in some Lego City helicopter sets or a couple other different things, turbines on something. Works well. One thing I really like about this mock is the kind of almost lime tube that's being fed throughout this mock. It really adds this beautiful pop of color, and it very effectively works when you contrast it with the purple and the black here. It's just a beautiful pop of a beautiful accent color. But also the idea of just feeding tubing through a mock. It often looks quite nice, and this is definitely a great example of just how nice that can look. One thing, of course, that can be a little annoying about feeding tubing through a mock is it's something you really have to factor in from the beginning of the design, because you can do it as an afterthought, but, often you do need to factor in areas for it to fit into the mock on one side and then feed through back up into another area and stuff like that. So it does require a little bit of kind of planning. And that planning isn't necessarily difficult per se, it's just something you just got to keep in mind if you do want to do that. And I definitely think it's something that most of the time looks really, really good. So that's at least, again, something to consider. And also consider the color of that tubing. Is it black and it just fits in with the rest of the mock, or is it like this beautiful pop of almost kind of lime here that really contrasts nicely? Also like the aerial that he's done here on the top of the drone, adding in a little black minifigure sword here. Works very well. It's a really nice part use there. There's a lot to love about this mock. I also kind of like the idea of a drone being a kind of nice companion mock to something else. You know, maybe you've got this very tech-savvy Matoran and he's got a drone that he kind of pilots around. Or maybe you've got this kind of bounty hunter guy and he's got this backpack on his back that kind of flips out and transforms into a drone and flies around and stuff. Maybe has some guns on it or something. I kind of like that idea. I think it's pretty cool. Maybe that's something you could do on one of your own mocks. On to the next mock. This is by Logan McOwen and is called Patrol Slizer. I think it's a really great color scheme and it very instantly communicates something. You can easily tell this is a police style kind of Slizer character here. And that's always something cool, you know, making kind of cop characters like this. It's an interesting thing you can kind of dive on into there. And you got very set color schemes, which you know, kind of do sometimes change around the world. Maybe they don't have as much blue and have a little bit more black, or they can have sometimes even kind of greens and whites and blues and things, and no black at all, depending on where you live in the world. A lot of the police car color schemes can be quite different there. So you just sort of see what works and what kind of fits in with the area of the world you live in there. And you could very effectively and easily communicate a kind of police style look to a mock. And that of course, you could also do some fire-themed mocks or some ambulance-themed mocks as well. You know, there's interesting territory you could dive on into, and that could fit very effectively into the Bionicle world that you've created for yourself for your own unique storyline. Who knows? I like that this mock is essentially just the very basic Slizer sort of construction here, very much following in with the kind of general look that you would see on a lot of the Slizer sets. But there's some slight additions to it, like this sort of almost kind of protective armor that kind of goes around his neck and shoulders here, and it kind of has the police car sirens up top, and this very interesting kind of, almost sort of armor, kind of padded look that he has. It's unique, but it does a lot for the mock, kind of gives it this nice accent point, which really makes it pop, which I think is very cool. On to the final mock here. This is another mock by IGU, and is called Fire Slizer Cerberus. I wanted to put this mock in here, one, because it was actually a submitted mock, but two, because IGU's done a whole bunch of different Slizer revamps here, and I wanted to really seriously give him his due because he's done a lot of great stuff, and it fits perfectly within this episode. And I think this mock is crazy cool and crazy unique as well. It has this giant, crazy dinosaur crawler, almost like monster truck look to it. It's very unique. I can honestly say I've not really seen something like this before. It's got this awesome, cool dino head design here with this sort of moving jaw. These crazy crane arms as well. It's insanely cool. It's like a mishmash of all sorts of different things that works perfectly together. It has this really nice industrial look to it, and I think that's very much goes towards the fact there are a lot of more mechanical looking details in this, whether that's texture based mechanical details or just focusing more on having pistons or kind of having this funky kind of treaded, almost kind of tank like look to it. It's really great to see. And I love these shots from the back here, how it has this funky tail here, which uses one of these Mars mission or Life on Mars tube pieces here. They have this beautiful kind of rimmed effect and ribbed kind of effect to it that does look very mechanical. And as you can see here, he's fed through some construction bone pieces in here so that that tail can actually be posable. And that's something you can always do with flex tube or any kind of tubing, is actually feed things through it so that it isn't just sort of moving all over the place and difficult to kind of control in the way that it moves. You put something through it there and you can very much easily manipulate that. Of course, with larger things like this, you can use, hero factory bones and things like that. Or with flex tube, you could just get a little strong piece of wire, feed it through the very thin hole in that flex tube there, and you should be able to more effectively pose it. That's not necessarily purist, of course, because you're using non-Lego elements there, but if you want it to sort of bend to your will, that's certainly a way you can do it. Yeah, I think this thing's a crazy cool revamp too. Again, very vastly different to the original here, which of course is this Fire Slizer mock, or set rather, not a mock. But the mock that we were talking about here by IGU is fantastic, and again takes it in a vastly different direction that just kind of works. So I love that, this very big mishmash of ideas here that perfectly works into this crazy, weird, industrial like dinosaur or something. Really love it. And that has been a bunch of Slizers, Throwbots, and a couple Robo Riders thrown in there at the end. So maybe that's something you yourself can do, is kind of just have a little bit of a play around with some Throwbots, Robo Riders, and Slizers. You never know what those older LEGO themes might teach you, and heck, those themes might have been something that if you were born at the time, Or if you were a little bit more interested at the time, maybe you kind of looked at them and you're like, but now in hindsight, you can look back on them and go, actually, you know what? This was a really cool theme. I'm going to build some stuff in this universe. I'm going to focus in on some of these designs and just see what I can create. It's never too late, as they say. So that's it for this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Hopefully you were inspired and hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to submit some of your own stuff to the show, you can do so through the email you're currently seeing on the screen, or if you head down to the description below, you can copy and paste that email right into an email. In that email, you can include pictures of your mock, maybe a link to your mock, and any other information, your name of the mock, any of that sort of stuff. Send it to me, anything you think is important in that email, put it on in, and I'll add it to the list, and one day it'll appear on the show. Also in the description are links to the mocks you saw in today's episodes. Be sure to head on over to those guys' stuff, check them on out, and check out some of the other crazy cool stuff that they've done. They're phenomenal builders. They deserve some love. Also, links to my stuff is there too, if you are interested. Otherwise, that's it for this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Happy building. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.